We promised to take you live there to that briefing by the Electricity and Energy Minister, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, and that briefing has started, so let's take you there live.
On a much more better footing than we did the winter of 2024. And what are those key features from a generation point of view? The first one was that we are entering this confidently in that Quebec unit number 2 was synchronized to the grid on the 30th of December 2024. So remember, this was after some extensive outage. And then Quebec unit number 1, which is currently on outage as part of our compliance requirements in keeping with the long-term operation, the extension that we got from the operator to grant us an additional 20 years of operation. And Quebec unit number 1 is that although it's out, but we are projecting that it's going to come back in July of 2025, when we'll be at the peak of the winter period. So as the point is that during this winter, we're going to have the benefit of all of the Quebec units, at least by July of 2025. And then the third major difference between the winter of 2025 and the winter of 2024 is that we have successfully synchronized Kusile unit number 6 to the grid on the 26th of March. So that's an additional capacity that we have on the grid, approximately 800 megawatts, and we didn't have the benefit of this 800 megawatts when we entered the winter of 2024. And of course, we have now completed the Kusile unit number 2, unit number 3 outages. Of course, when we went into winter of 2024, we had Kusile 1, 2, 3 available to us, but remember that we needed to keep our commitment to the Minister of Fisheries Environment, Forestry, Fisheries Environment. Remember that we were given a temporary reprieve. A dispensation was created for us to be able to use these 3 units, and we had a legal obligation now to ensure that we restore these units to the permanent stack. We had a chimney, we had erected a permanent stack. So the winter of 2024, we had all these units available, but now as I speak to you, only have this only 2 of these units, but we are confident that we will get back Kusile unit number 1. So essentially the situation in relation to the 3 units of Kusile of winter of last year and winter of this year will be the same, only that for this year now we have complied fully with the environmental requirements, so we don't need that dispensation as it was given to us by the Minister of DFFE. And the other major difference in relation to how we're entering the winter of 2025 compared to the winter of 2024 is that now we've got, we'll have the benefit of Medupi unit number 4. You remember it was unforced long-term outage as a result of a catastrophic event that happened about 4 or 5 years ago. We didn't have the benefit of this 800 megawatts to the grid, and now when we get into this winter, we are going to get the benefit of this unit number 4, essentially an additional 800 megawatts. So if you come to think of it from a structural point of view, what is the generation base of 2025 versus 2024? So essentially, we've got approximately 2,500 megawatts of additional capacity. And that's why when we shared with the country a week ago, we're very bullish, optimistic about the prospects of a load shedding free winter, and or at worst a stage 2 load shedding if certain things were to happen. If a certain risk were to materialize, then we did make the point that we will then at most from our own projection, have to initiate stage 2 of load shedding. So having said all of this, and I make the point, I reiterate that all of the above still remain. So that which we said a week ago and what I'm saying today still obtains. So there's no deviation from what we have shared with the country. So the next logical question to answer now is, why are we having load shedding? If indeed we are bullish about this prospect, if indeed the base of generation capacity has been improved by an additional 2,500 megawatts, so why did we find it appropriate to introduce stage 2 load shedding starting last night? Of course, during the peaks computed between 4 in the afternoon to 10 in the evening, and then the communication makes the point again today, and of course tomorrow we'll revise the performance and we'll share with you. So why is it that we have landed here? We have landed here because if you look at some of the things that the points we have made, was that we're tapering down planned maintenance. Planned maintenance at an all-time high, because as I've made the point previously, even during the height of load shedding, was that we're going to experience short-term pain for long-term gain. We needed to deploy the resources that we received from the Minister of Finance, in total over a 3-year cycle, 252 billion rands. A significant proportion of that we have invested in the replenishing and the refurbishing of our generation units so that we can have the benefit of uninterrupted power supply. And the winter outlooks also made the point when we presented last week, was that we were going to bring down planned maintenance from the highs of about 7,500, even touching 8,000 megawatts of planned maintenance. We'll bring it down. And when we enter this almost the third week of May, we're going to bring it down to below 5,000. So that's what part of the assumptions. So the reason why we are here today is primarily because that promise of making sure that that planned maintenance comes down to below 5,000, we have not been able to fulfill it. So essentially, we have experienced what in technical terms we call outage sleep. So outage sleeps really simply means that there's a promise. Just imagine you take your car to a dealership for a service, and they tell you that bring it in the morning, and then you'll have it available in the afternoon at 5. And then at 5 you go, they tell you, sorry, we are not ready, please come tomorrow. You go tomorrow, says, please, we are still not ready, please come the other day. Of course, we have made the necessary arrangements when they told you that they need it for the day, and then you can come fetch it close of business. You can do interim arrangements, how you drop kids at home, how you fetch them, rather at school, how you fetch them from school. You could hire a car for the day. Those who are privileged, you can Uber. Those who are privileged, I'm using that as an illustration. Of course, in this instance, we're first one to accept that in this instance, really it's not about the engineering performance of the units. It has to do with how we're able to manage this situation. And of course, we are having very difficult, hard and candid conversations with the executive team to ensure that we are not experiencing these lapses. Of course, in the nature of the business that we are in, when we experience these lapses, they are catastrophic. They are catastrophic in that you are going to have periods in the day where we don't have electricity. That has got major implications on business, and it's a major disruption to the quality of life of ordinary people, citizens, and for that we want to apologize sincerely. But what is important is what is it that we'll do to ensure that we obviate this situation, so that in the future I don't stand before the country and say that there's outage sleeps. We do apologize. I think what is important, having apologized, is to go further and explain what are some of the interventions that will be made. Of course, as I've made the point, the team, the executive management team, will be engaging first with the general managers at the various power stations. I think there has to be an appreciation that we have entered a new domain, and that domain requires that although we have registered significant progress, But I think we're getting to a point where there has to be consequence management if there's a promise to bring a unit by this date. And remember, how we arrive at a determination on when the unit will come back is a function of intense planning. So first you have to do projection on what is it that needs to be fixed when you take the unit out. And having made that determination, you also have to answer the question, will the spare parts be available? And they should be available in the workshop. The third issue you need to answer, will I have the right skills to be able to fix the unit when it comes out for maintenance, and or do I have to mobilize additional capacity from outside? So that's a planning function. And of course, in this instance, we have not carried ourselves very well, and that's why you see these outage slips. And then I've made the point earlier on that some of these outage slips requires that we engage the original equipment manufacturers. They are the ones that are contracted to do this exercise. And we're beginning to see that on a number of occasions, we were experiencing delays in retaining the units, having done the necessary planning. So this is a planning issue, this is a management issue, and on this score, we have not covered ourselves in glory. I mean, just to give you an appreciation of these numbers, when we experienced the most intense levels of load shedding in 2023, the outage slips were averaging anything between 2,700 to 3,500 megawatts. And when we experienced that a good run of no load shedding, the team had done very well. We have brought that below 1,000 megawatts of outage slips. So you can see now that essentially over the past 3 weeks, a month or so, we have dropped back to the levels, dropped down to those levels of 2023, where we had seen the most intense levels of load shedding. And that's the point I was making earlier on, that these are a very candid, robust conversation and comfortable conversation with the team to ensure that they were able to keep it focus on the bouncing ball, ensure that we get the units back on track. They must generate the megawatts at the time that we have made the promise, because the resources were made available. So we're not sitting with a money problem. We are not sitting with a skills capacity issue. We are sitting with the ability for us to do proper planning and ensure that the units are able to come back. So we are working at that. And like I said, so the one slip from the projection of the winter outlook is that we have not kept our promise on the outage slips. And we make the point in that winter outlook that if the aggregate unplanned capacity loss factor, the amount of megawatts that are out as a result of delays returning back, as a result of units failing on their own, if they exceed 13,000 megawatts, then there will be a need for us to initiate load shedding. And we did say that we think that we should not even exceed 15,000. That red line. As a result of these outage slips, were the other side of 13,000 megawatts of UCLF, and that's why we had to initiate the load shedding. I want to conclude by making the point, before I invite Mr. Marokane just to share with you the level of the detail of what are some of those units and how are we retaining them, and also going into the future at the management level, how we are going to ensure that they were able to bring down the levels of outage slips. I mean, frankly speaking, highly unlikely that you are going to eliminate them completely, but we need to bring them under tolerance levels so that we don't breach our promise of remaining below 13,000 megawatts of unplanned capacity loss factor, so that there is no load shedding. But the point I'm making, I think it's important that there's a greater appreciation. We have gone above that 13,000 megawatts, and that's why we had to initiate that load shedding. It's something that is receiving attention. As I was saying, we have moved beyond what I refer to as structural load shedding. Structural load shedding, I'm referring to the fundamentals that underpin our generation capacity have been resolved. That's the point I'm making. So the issues around planning, the issues around how we are able to, going into the future, ensure that our maintenance levels are such that they are much more aligned with the demand profile. Of course, we had to do what we did in the past 24 months because we had no option but to go very aggressive on maintenance. But what we have succeeded, and thanks to the leadership of Mr. Marukani and Mr. Ngumalo and the rest of the guardians at Eskom, they've been able to ensure that we are able to build some degree of headspace, and now we are going to taper down and ensure that our planned maintenance is aligned with the demand profile, and you don't get to a situation where you are overexposed. Because these units, these 3,100 megawatts, the great majority of them are the ones that were returning from planned maintenance, and once we have brought down planned maintenance, essentially we have eliminated that risk. But we are able to do so because of the progress that the team has registered. But of course, when we experience in load shedding, I think it soils the good story. I think it just diminishes the confidence that the public have in our efforts to resolve the load shedding problem. But I really want to say to the country, now we are not experiencing structural load shedding. I think the fundamentals are in place, and we'll continue to improve other areas. Again, this stage 2 load shedding in the peak period is another lesson that the team will draw from and ensure that we continue to improve. I think it's going to be something, the improvement are going to be gradual, are going to be incremental. Of course, in our space, the scope for catastrophic failure is limited because everyone can see when the lights are not on. For me, that represents a catastrophic failure because it undermines the economy to perform, but also it disrupts people's lives. So let me invite Mr. Marukani just to take us through on that level of detail together with Becky.
Thank you, Minister. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to the viewers at home. Just to give you some color, and maybe just to start off and confirm what the Minister said, our forecast in terms of our winter plan, as we explained last week, remains valid. In that plan, we actually indicated that the base case for assumption has moved down to unplanned losses of 13,000, and we're able to do so based on the performance experienced from the fleet in the last financial year, which performance led us to have a very long period of no load shedding, but which performance also came on the back of intense work done by the teams. We did indicate there that in a situation where this excursion, in as far as breakdowns are concerned, and that excursion happens to the extent of 15,000 or so megawatts, that we are likely to experience stage 2 load shedding. And this is really what happened this week. Unfortunately, as we indicated in our conversations last week as well, this is as a result mainly of slippages from outage execution. And slippages, as Minister explained, pertain to our inability to return these units on the dates that they are planned to come back. To give you a sense, between the 9th of May and the 12th of May, the underlying unplanned losses hovered between 9,500, 10.3 thousand and 11.4 thousand, or 11,400 megawatts. That's really where we want to be running our fleet even better. However, in that same period, we had the escalation of unplanned capacity loss as a result of slippages moving between 1.5 to 3,000 megawatts. That's the danger that we really have to be managing from our execution of our maintenance program. And as the Minister said, this is an aspect that from our review of the first cases of load shedding earlier this year is receiving attention. It's receiving attention because it has to do with the clinical finish when it comes to execution of the work, from scope definitions, readiness from skills availability, both on our sites and the sites of our contractors, availability of spare parts, and the discipline of following through within the schedules that we require. We've started work already on the space, as we said, that we've learned some lessons from the first incidents of this year. And we had started a very different planning approach with our OEMs, where they're involved right at the beginning in a much more deeper way. And we have brought on closer to us some of the OEMs who are able to help us with specialist areas that have caused some of the pain points that we observe. So we are moving in that direction. The important aspect at this point in time in the calendar year is that our plant maintenance needs to be tapering down. We indicated that by the middle of May, the anticipation is to have plant maintenance below 5,000 megawatts and gradually towards 4,000. We are already below 5,000. We're not seeing the benefit of that because we've got the slippages that we have to deal with. It's primarily around some 6 units in Duva, in Grootvlei, Kriel, Medupi, and Tutuka, and the teams are hard at work bringing those units back into operation. In fact, some of them have started coming through from last night. Some will come through in the course of the day. Some will come through tomorrow. And that should really see us working out that unplanned capacity loss due to outage slips. As we get into a phase of lower maintenance levels, plant maintenance levels, the risk associated with outage slips reduces quite drastically. And so our critical period is really the transitioning from what was a high period of maintenance to getting back into normal operations. And it is this transience that has really cost us some of the pain. The situation that happened, of course, was as a result of these delays, but was exacerbated by some of 2 key safety-related incidents and outages at Letabo and Kusile yesterday. These are outages that we would have taken anyway in the course and in the name of ensuring that our safety practices are above reproach. The teams are looking at those 2 specific cases, that one unit at Kusile and one at Letabo, and we are hoping that we will get this sufficiently restored before the beginning of next week, having gone through the necessary planning stages. For now, we will continue with the load shedding as communicated yesterday. We'll do the 6-hour bouts between 4 and 10 p.m., the 6-hour slots to manage the evening peak at stage 2. Our teams will, of course, assess the situation every day at midday, and today at midday, the same exercise will be undertaken to assess where we are and how the evening looks like. And tomorrow we'll do the same and provide updates to yourselves appropriately. As indicated, the work with deepening planning capabilities and collaboration with the OEMs is underway. We have identified some of the OEMs that we have had MOUs with before that have really brought some insights that are helpful in terms of accelerating the pace and shortening the time it takes to resolve some of our challenges related to material, but also to technical skills in our stations, and that work Becky has been doing. We have also started engaging with counterparts in some of our local OEMs. We need to address the issue of skills across the spectrum. It's skills within Eskom that we have started dealing with as part of the generation recovery plan. We have to also address skills within our main contractors, particularly in the areas of welding, which impact schedules as we go through outage execution. We have found each other in terms of ways of working that will help us narrow the gaps. And I'm comfortable that as we refine insights coming from the experiences that we have, we'll have the ability to collectively work as Team SA to to minimize the risk. I just want to pause here, perhaps, Minister, and allow that we take questions, and maybe we can deal with some more specific issues that come from the audience here. Suffice to say that our forecast, our plans remains valid. What's necessary is for us to really drive this aspect that has introduced risk that pertains to outage slippages. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Minister and to Mr. Marugana. Colleagues, you know the drill and it has not changed. We will now take questions, and we will do so by starting with the hands in the room, and then we will proceed with questions that have been shared online. So by a show of hands, colleagues, do we have any questions in the room? There's Heidi. Any other questions? And then we'll take Katleho. Before we take the online questions, then Heidi, you can go ahead. Thanks.
It's Heidi Joggers from NCA. Please could you just repeat the units that are out and at which power stations? You said it too fast. Mr. Marugana, if you could just repeat that. And then also, can you just clarify, we staying in stage 2 until further notice? Thanks.
Good morning, Ozi from the SABC. We find ourselves here, Minister. I remember at some point you had gone to these power stations to engage them about some of the issues that you picked up. Excuse me. It was about, I think at some point you've spoken that most of these issues at these power stations are man-made and they're not technical. We haven't gotten a report back to say that from that time when you engaged with them, what is it that you uncovered? What is it that you managed to maybe get a sense of what's happening at these power stations to avoid ourselves finding ourselves here again?